Good morning, everybody. Ooh. Now I just wake up everything. Thank you very much for being here. I know that it's not an easy choice when you have a lot of technical talks to come here to a talk that is not technical. So really thank you for that. I'm going to be talking about all my fears about public speaking. So it's been more than 2 years since I'm a speaker at conferences, and I'm still really, really stressed. Especially the first 5 minutes, today is not that bad. Normally it's like the day of my wedding that it was. After that, I'm gonna discuss a little bit how you get to speak at a conference, the process of creation of a talk and submission a talk to a conference. And at the end, assuming that maybe one of you would like to become a conference speaker, some tips for the day of the conference. I'm quite happy about the number. I was expecting only to have actually the speaker for the next talk. So I was counting on him. Now I have more people. So let's start with my fears. I always thought that in order to be one of the speakers at the conference, you need to be the top expert on the subject that you are talking. That you have that level of expertise that when someone asks you a question, no matter what question is, you can answer in 2 seconds. And I'd never considered myself an expert like that. But after being on different conferences as an attendant, I realized that the value of another experience is to give us hope, not to tell us how or whether to proceed. I get more value of talks of someone saying how I discovered blockchain or how I discovered the newest technology, how I failed doing something, rather than high-level tech talks. But well, it's also because I'm no longer a Java developer. I started as a Java developer. Now I'm trying to get the best of the people. I'm trying to get a little bit the best of myself. I realized that when you share your experience, you might motivate someone to think differently. Not copying the way that you are doing things, but motivating to change things and to become a better version of yourself. That was more or less my first motivation to overcome that, but I have a big, big problem. I'm really afraid of public speaking. I'm always thought that I would never be able to be here. And if you ask my mother, we are 7 siblings, and probably I could be her last choice about all the siblings to be here speaking at the conference. The thing is, I want to be better every day. And I realize that it's not that complicated to be here. It's more complicated when you go to a new client with 4 or 5 people that you don't know at all, and you can see the reactions of all of them. See if you are doing a good job or a bad job. Here today, it's not a lot of people, so it's really more complicated than another talks that there were 200 or more people. The bigger the audience is, actually the easier it is to talk, because you don't see the faces. And one question for all of you, have you ever thought, or when you are on a conference, that the speaker is looking at you all the time? Do you have that feeling sometimes? No? I have sometimes. Do you know why? In my case, if you notice that I'm looking at you more often than others, it's because maybe your face is making some kind of cool attitude, and you are my anchor in order to not be stressed. And that, a lot of speakers do that. There are a lot of speakers that are actually really afraid of public speaking, even after several years. And the first 3 minutes are really scary. So if I'm looking at you, don't get nervous. It's only that maybe you are smiling a little bit and you're helping me. So thank you very much. I don't speak perfect English. I think that you have noticed my accent is really, really strong. And believe me, that's the soft version of my accent. I've already performed some lessons to soften my accent. So you can imagine 3 years ago. In Spain, normally, at least when I was at the school, we didn't have good teachers. I really hope that the next speaker has better accent than myself. No pressure. But if you want to become better, try to speak a different language. And one thing that you have to realize, have you checked today's lineup or tomorrow's lineup? How many speakers are from English native speaker country? I think 1 or 2? Two. So you don't need to have a perfect English to give a talk at the conference. You need to try to make yourself understandable. Hopefully you're following me, and it's not that bad. And also have another problem. My English is not perfect, and I speak really fast. Now, after several talks, I'm managing to speak at this pace that is still too fast for a lot of people. If it's really, really too fast, raise both hands, and I know that I have to slow down. It's usually faster the first 3-4 minutes of the talk. But I realize, again, when you go to a conference, and you have someone from UK or from US giving a talk, man, they end up speaking really fast, even faster than me, because they don't realize using their native language. So one of the key things for me as well is that's the reason I'm looking at 4 or 5 of you from time to time, because looking at your reactions, I know whether I'm speaking too fast or not, and whether my accent is too bad or not. I know that sometimes to be the first one speaking at a conference on a Monday is really complicated, because after the weekend, we are a little bit sleepy. So I might do from time to time, hey, to wake you up. And the biggest problem that they have, I am asthmatic. So if you start calculating, I'm afraid of public speaking, I'm not an expert, I speak really fast, my English is really bad, I'm asthmatic. Antonio, what the heck are you doing here then? Well, that's one thing that you need to realize, is to accept your limitations. On the first talks, I would never share with the audience that I'm asthmatic, but I'm always worried that you can hear my breathing. If I watch myself on a video, I can only listen my breathing all the time, because I'm really, really stressed about that. But I have some kind of revelation one day on the conference. That woman was the opening keynote. Do you know her? Anyone? She's Sharon Stead. She was the opening keynote on a conference with 400 people, and she's a heavy stutterer. She's stuttering all the time, without a stop. And that was the opening keynote. And the talk, it was about sharing your problems, your limitations with the audience. Because if I'm sharing my limitations with you, you are going to own also my limitations, and at the end, being asthmatic is not going to be a problem, because you're going to forget about that. So I have a different ways of sharing why I want to say that, but I'm from Spain, and we like to be open sometimes, so I have one of those all the time with me. It's here, so let's say I have even 2. Hopefully you won't see me using it, but it means that sometimes I would need to stop 3 or 4 seconds to get my breathing back. And if you are really unlucky, or lucky, you are going to hear me breathing. You know, I have to admit here, I was a project manager before, and a friend of mine told me, you know, Antonio, I know that you are asthmatic, but when you breathe like that, and knowing that you were a project manager before, you remind me of someone. So with this little joke, usually you are going to forget about my breathing, because everybody likes Star Wars, right? Those are all my fears, and the motivations for me is always to try to get better, to improve my accent, to speak slower, and continuous improvement. We all want to do things every day better, but also you can do continuous improvement with yourself and become better. So now I'm decided to become better, how to get to speak at a conference. So there is a lot of conferences, they do call for papers. You can submit your talks. There's one thing that most of people don't know, the ratio of submissions and the ratio of talks accepted. That's a real case from this year. Lead developer, London, 23 slots, more than 200 submissions. If you see the ratio, around 90% of the talks are going to be rejected. So if you want to become a conference speaker, you need to ensure that you are ready to get rejected several times. But well, you know, fail fast and improve. Maybe the abstract wasn't good enough, or maybe you didn't target the correct. Another example that it was actually public in LinkedIn, DevOpsDays Belgium, more than 1,000 submissions. They even say for each type. So 900 submissions were rejected. But let's be positive. 100 accepted. So let's try to focus on that. What's the minimum information that you would need to submit? Depending on the conference, sometimes you only need to submit one title and one description, like this one. And usually you have to submit a little bit about yourself. So profile picture, where you're coming from, and things like that. Other conferences, they ask for more information, about more detailed timings, and even if you need some technical equipment. Because I never do live coding demo, because hey, if I'm afraid of public speaking, I would be freaking scared of things going bad. And if you're doing live coding, if any of you do live coding talks, you have my respect. The submission process. Some conferences, they say that it's a blind process, and then for most of the cases it is. So when they send the talks to the program committee, you don't see who is behind that. They remove the profile. However, I found out on some of them that even if they say that it's a blind process, they ask you for a link to one of your previous talk. So it's not really blind, right? If they can see you on the talk. Choose your subject when you are submitting. Keep it relevant to the conference if it's about technology. So don't submit a talk about Node.js for a blockchain conference or things like that. And the only caveat is if you have some talk that is about motivation or inspiration or things like that, sometimes you can submit to a different talk. And try to have catchy title and description. One of the talks that I created a long time ago, it was about project management and DevOps. If you submit the title project management and DevOps, probably it's not going to be accepted because the title is boring, right? You are already putting project management, so it's already boring, but you're not doing a catchy thing. The title that I submit, it was project management from a Stone Age to DevOps. That sounds a little bit better, and that sounds at least motivate a little bit to check the description. So try to do something, don't say something, blockchain for beginners. That's a usual talk. I have seen at least 8 speakers submitting that exact title. So try to create a new title, a different one, not the same title that someone else could submit. Just a reminder, it's a long process. Sometimes you need to submit papers for conferences that are in 9 months or in 6 months, depending on where is the conference. And the way that I create talks now, not at the beginning, I follow more or less this. I always define or refine my goals, that why do I want to speak at a conference? What do I want to share with people? The talk ideas. You need to find the good idea. That's usually a lot of time for me. And then once you have the idea, you have to approach the conferences. Hopefully, one of them will accept, and then you can practice. So let's go one by one. Why do you want to speak at a conference? So in my case, it's sharing experience. I have learned a lot, and I think that I become a better Scrum Master, learning from other Scrum Masters. So I want others to learn from my experience, to try new things and to become better. I always think, if you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, but you're not sharing it, you have nothing, because no one else would know that you can help. There are a lot of people that are maybe independent contractors that they do the public speaking as marketing. It's a way to get your name known, and then you can get business. There are people that are actually living now from the giving talks. Some of the creators of the Agile Manifesto, for example, I know the rates of 2 of them to giving talks, and yeah, they can live only giving talks now. If you see on the role title of someone, advocate, it means that part of their job is also give talks around the world to show about the product of the company or why it's so cool to work for that company. If you want to start being a conference speaker, target small conferences or meetups. I live in London. We have meetups for everything. So it's even meetups to help people to become conference speaker. So target those. In my case, my first 2 conferences were in Ukraine and Lithuania because they have less amount of people submitting papers there. And sometimes it's a way of marketing when you're bringing 2 speakers from UK, 2 speakers from Netherlands, and 1 from US. It's good for the conference. And not everybody wants to travel to Ukraine when you're in UK because maybe you don't have possibility of business there. But you need to build your name as a speaker in order to go to a bigger conference. And sometimes you target conferences because you like those conferences and you want to speak. A good way is for the conference that you like to be an attendant, probably it's the right conference for you to submit your talk because you are on the same mindset as the conference. One thing, I have some friends that are public speakers for 5 or 6 years. Sometimes you need to submit a paper knowing that you're not going to be accepted at all, but maybe next year you will, because they will remind your name. So it's important to target the long-term process. So different talks that are really good on conferences, case studies about implementation of a new methodology or a new technology in a company. The real experience, so when someone is saying, we tried to implement Kubernetes, but we failed, probably you're going to have a full room with that, because there are a lot of people that want also to try with Kubernetes, doing Kubernetes as an example. Tech exploration, last year there were a lot of talks about blockchain. This year is Ethereum, I don't know the next technology. When you're discovering a new technology, you might have good possibilities to get accepted. However, you need to be mindful, a lot of people are going to do the same. They are going to submit actually the exploration of a new technology. Some talks that are interesting is when someone who is without a technical background is trying to do things on Amazon or Azure. So it's explaining VMs from a manager's perspective. That one got accepted on big conferences. There are a lot of talks and a lot of conferences that are actually specific from some architectures or some tech choices like containers. And there are a lot of talks that are about the strategy, empathy, software delivery, a lot of talks about Agile, a lot of conferences about Agile. So you might find any conference for any subject that you could choose. There are some talks as well about leadership, But I found out that if you don't have on your role title a C or a really high-level role, there is a chance that you're not going to be accepted at all in those kind of talks. So create a talk idea. That's the process that I follow. It might work or it might not work at all for any of you. But I note down any possible idea that I have. This talk, actually, the origin of this talk was at DevOpsDays Riga on the open spaces. Someone say, I don't remember the name, hi, I want to know how you become a conference speaker. So I note it down. And another conferences, more people ask me about that. So I say, okay, maybe there's something. I start looking for similar talks. There are not a lot, and not a lot in Europe. So when you find an idea, if you don't find at all any talk or anyone speaking about that, you have two choices. It could be really good because you found really a good talk, a good subject, or it could be really, really bad because that subject actually no one is interested, and that's the reason no one is talking about that. If there are people talking about that, check whether they are on the same area, if they are in Europe or in America, UK. If there is no one on the area, then it's a good opportunity, and you have maybe a possibility to get accepted. And do that till you have the idea that you want to create a talk. That's probably the hardest for me, is to choose the idea for the new talk. Then you need to approach the conferences. On my first talk, I started creating the whole talk, all the slides. I was rehearsing with my colleagues, but I didn't put the same effort for the title and the description. So that talk was rejected a lot of times. Now, when I have one idea and I manage to get a good title and good description, I ask my colleagues from different backgrounds, a data scientist, developer, another Scrum Master, whether it's well written or not, because I'm not good with English. Well, I'm getting better. And ask them, would you go to a conference to attend that talk? If you start getting a lot of people saying, oh, actually, yes, it could be interesting, then submit the paper. I haven't created the talk yet. I'm creating POCs, the proof of concept, or MVP on Agile. And I submit it to conferences. And that's the best feedback ever. If I don't get accepted, probably it wasn't a good idea. But I ask for feedback to the organizers. Sometimes they answer, sometimes they don't. But it helped me to iterate, to change the title and the description, and to realize whether maybe it wasn't a good idea at all. If that idea got accepted, then I create the talk. It's like a little minimum value product, accepted, production, then let's do it better. You have your talk. You have to practice out loud all the time. You know, a lot of people, and I was guilty of doing that at the beginning, we practice in our minds, right? And I can tell you, each time that you are giving your talk in your mind, it's the best talk ever. Your English is perfect. Your pace is perfect. You are understanding everything. You are even having laugh and saying, oh, that joke is good. It's not like that when you do it out loud. You need to hear yourself. You are going to hate yourself hearing yourself. If you can record yourself, do it and watch it later. It's a good way to get better. I hate watching myself. Even after 2 years, I'm still hating myself. And there is one reason. I'm the only one who actually knows exactly what I want to say on every moment of the talk. So I'm the one who knows that I'm not following what I wanted when I watch a video. So you are your worst critic, but you are the one who can make you get better. Watch yourself on the video. Your company, if you can do lunch and learn sessions that you can practice while the rest of the people are eating, practice with people and ask for feedback. It's really, really important. It helps you to get the timings better, to get more or less the reactions of the people, to get better about not seeing the people as well when you are afraid of public speaking. Sometimes you need to be able to look at all of you without seeing you. And always, always ask for feedback. You need to build a brand of yourself, because a lot of conferences, one of the questions is, what's your experience giving talks? Beginner, so 0, 1, 2, 3 talks, around 5 talks, more than 10. So they ask most of the time for Twitter or LinkedIn, and they check whether you are talking about the subject, you are sharing information, whether you are posting blog posts. One of the things that a friend of mine told me, put always your Twitter there, because if someone is taking a picture of you during the talk, it's going to be easier for them to remind what's your Twitter handler in case they want to say, I'm just boring on this talk with Mind of IAC, but well, that's a risk. One of the things is share always your slides after the talk, so they will be available in 1 hour or 2 maximum. Share always the slides, tweet that those are the slides of my talk, and always ask for feedback to the attendants, to anybody. Feedback is a gift. If someone tells you something that you need to improve, they are actually giving you a gift. And I'm like small kids at Christmas, I want as many gifts as possible. So don't be afraid to share your thoughts with someone after the talk. You are going to make the speaker better. And if it's to me, I'm going to say thank you all the time, even if the feedback is going to be, Antonio, probably you should stop doing this talk, it was really boring, or ask the organizers not to put it on the Monday morning, the first talk. When you have the chance that the conference is recording a video, share the video of your previous talk. It's really, really important, but there's a little star there. Watch the video first. If it's more or less okay, or better, share it. If you see yourself and probably it's the worst talk ever, maybe don't share that one, or share it after to compare, oh, that was my first talk ever, and this is now after 1 year, so people can see the difference. And that is because I remember once, after one talk that I gave in Riga, actually, that was a good conference for me. Got a lot of feedback. Another speaker came after and said, oh, I enjoyed your talk. It was quite good. And he told me something that was really weird. He said, it's the first time that you are in Riga. Yeah, and it looks quite nice. You should go to Tallinn. Tallinn is a really beautiful city. We all know that Tallinn is in a different country. So why someone is telling me in Riga, you should visit Tallinn? So I thought about that a couple of days after the conference. And then I said, okay, tech conferences in Tallinn. I was one conference the next month, and that speaker was program committee member. So I submit the talk, because there were still some slots, and I got instant message on LinkedIn 3 minutes after that. I'm really happy that you submitted your talk. However, I have to tell you that I denied your papers on other talks, that I'm also program committee, because the video that you sent, it was really, really bad. And you weren't even confident at all, you were too nervous, so I didn't like it. Then I explained to him, oh, that was my first talk ever. He said, oh, that explains everything, so don't send that video, or if you send it, send this was my first talk ever, and this is the most recent one, then it's going to be easier. It's one of the key things that you need to check as well. A lot of speakers are actually program committee of other conferences. So it's good to get to know them, to follow on Twitter some of them, to tweet from time to time about the talks that they are doing, and it's a good way to actually get your name known for other conferences. Now, I discover conferences because another speaker, oh, by the way, I'm program committee of this one. Could you try to follow on Twitter and maybe submit next year? Doesn't mean that I'm going to be on that conference, but at least I should pass the first list. If you are lucky, you might get one of the speakers to be a mentor. One former job mate, it's Daniel Bryan. I don't know if you have ever watched him on a talk. He did several times the 7 deadly sins of microservices. So if you like microservices, maybe it's a good talk for you. And he helped me a lot at the beginning. So, okay, this is really good, Antonio. Now we have the title, the description, but where do I submit my papers? Because it's not that easy to find information unless you know it already. So there is a website, it's called papercall.io. There's a lot of conferences that they post there, the call for papers. So that's an example from this year, DevOpsDays Boston or DevConf in Krakow. Not all the conferences use paper call. There are a lot of conferences that actually they have their own framework to submit papers. So Jack's group, they have a lot of conferences in London and in Germany, and probably in another country that I'm forgetting. So that's the URL, so you can check later with the slides. We're at DevOps Days, so that's the URL of DevOps Days, and you can have a direct link to any DevOps Days conference that have the call for papers open. CodeMotion, again, different countries. You can find the ones that are open on that. But the easier way, actually, is whenever you find a conference that you like it, follow on Twitter. Normally, they are going to tweet when the call for papers is going to be open. And if you are waiting for a couple of months, tweet to them and say, hi, DevOps Days, I don't know, Warsaw. When are you going to open your call for papers? You might get an answer, and also someone of the organization is already knowing your name. Here, sometimes you need to get your name known in order to be considered. That's more or less all the process that I follow to submit. When you finish all of that, you may have also opportunities that you are invited directly. So it didn't happen on my first year and a half, but now I got organizers in Ukraine or in other countries that they invite you directly without even a call for papers. It was on the list of goals that I did, okay, I want to be a conference speaker, let's try to do some goals, and one of them it was to be invited directly to a conference. So the first time ever that I got a message like that on LinkedIn, oh, I'm the organizer of conference X, we want you to come to our city to give a talk. Man, that feels so good. A little scary as well, because you may think, oh wow, so they expect someone really, really good. Again, I'm still thinking I'm not expert, I speak fast, my English is a little bit not good. So it's always a fight between my fears and the good feeling of getting invited. Now there are some tips for the conference day that I discover that it's quite important. Bring your own clicker. I know that most of the time the conference organizers, they're giving you one to use. But if you are not used how fast it is, you can get 2 slides ahead, 1 slide back. Have you ever been on a conference talk and the speaker is going too fast with a slider going back and is getting distracted about that? That's really bad. And I know myself, if that happened to me, I could be really, really distracted. Bring your own display adapters. I have brought 2, especially if you have a Mac. Funnily enough, none of them were working today. but here they have a third one, and the third one is working. I don't know what happened with Macs. Sometimes one of my adapters is working, sometimes not, sometimes it's the second one, and today it was the first time that none of them were working. Well, check the conference room in advance. I always stress to arrive to a conference room and nothing working, because I've never given a talk without computer or anything. I have sometimes some tips or notes in order to follow what I want to say. If I don't have anything, probably I could be able to do it. It could be different order, but I could be really, really stressed. So probably you could be hearing my breathing even more than now. One of the key things, don't target everybody to like your talk. I know that it's impossible. Here there are some of you that don't like it. I'm really sorry for you. I hope that at least there are some people here that are finding this useful. If one of you after that becomes a conference speaker without being one before, I would be more than happy. Please let me know. Not having questions is okay after the talk. Depending on the country or even the city that you're giving the talk, you might have or not people asking questions. Because, again, I'm afraid of public speaking. One of the things that you could never, ever see is myself being there asking a question. Because I could be, no, I'm afraid. But you can have a lot of people coming to you to ask you because they are more used to that. In some countries, they ask questions only because they want to be heard. There are people that ask you a question about the previous slide that is, oh, what was that? And you only repeat the previous slide because it's the way of showing they want people to know that they are able to ask questions. So it's okay if you don't have any questions at all. I'm not going to be bothered. It's something that it happens. One of the things is when you're here, you can see a lot of people on mobiles, laptops. Not all of them are going to be bored. Or maybe, if you're unlucky, maybe some of them, they might start checking your profile on LinkedIn, Twitter, checking a little bit about yourself, your experience, and things like that. And sometimes they even tweeting, oh, it's amazing talk. Never happened to me, but. So don't get bored if someone is on the mobile or on the laptop. I remember on one of the talks that I gave in London, was a woman on the first row all the time with a laptop. Click, 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 click. So it was distracting, really distracting. After the conference, I realized that it was actually the journalist of the conference that was actually making notes to post on a blog about my talk. So don't be bothered. People can be actually preparing the learnings of your talk to share with your teammates later. That's a good thing. That's for me or for anybody. Remember to breathe. Sometimes I speak too fast that I forget to breathe, and you can feel in my voice that, oh, the breathing is getting bad, bad, bad. And enjoy it, and smile. I think it's a good feeling. The first minutes are really bad, and again, if one of you decide to try to create a new talk, let me know. If you want some help proofreading, just let me know. And please, let me know if you like it or not. Thank you. Do we any question? Knowing that it's okay not having any. Yeah.
Yeah, hello. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for your interesting talk. Can you go back to this statistic slide?
Yeah.
Because I have one question, and the question is, do you also think that this is a numbers game? So how many submitters are behind these number of proposals? Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, on this one, it doesn't mean that they had 1,000 submitters. As they have only 1,000 papers.
yeah, exactly. That's my question. So do you think there are a lot of people submitting like 4 talks or 5 or 10?
I usually submit 2 or 3 of the conference that I want to target, or sometimes if I know that only one of my talks could fit, I only submit 1. But even in some call for papers frameworks, they told the speakers maximum 3 submissions.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for sharing your experience. My question is, because your presentation was pretty much general, right? It wasn't about DevOps exactly. Is it okay? Is it easier for you to submit a conference to a conference talk when the topic is general, not that connected to the conference itself?
I think
like?
you can submit general topics. However, you know that the percentage of being accepted is even lower than when you are talking about DevOps, or about pipelines, automation, or things like that. So it's a risk that I do with some of my talks. With other talks that I discuss about Scrum Master in distributed teams, I target Agile conferences or Scrum conferences. So I like to share my experience because I would like someone else to become a speaker. So it's good to have a lot of speakers, and it's really good. Every experience is unique, and it's worth to be shared. So no one can share your experience, only yourself. And I'm pretty sure that it's amazing, so try it.
Okay.
I have one more question. What do you think about getting travel assistance, or do you pay for your own travel, or do you get paid for speaking?
Okay. I was wondering when I was going to have that question. I always have that question. Most of the time, on the first conference, you are going to need help from your company, or you pay yourself. And then, some conference, they help the speakers paying the hotel or the plane, not all of them. And if you are doing regular conferences every year, you might have an agreement with your company. I do have with my company an agreement about 3 or 4 conferences a year. They help me. With the rest of the conferences, depending on the subject and where they are, I might even consider to pay myself. So I went once to New York, but well, I was going to New York, and I can say that I have spoken in New York. So.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I have one question. Is it better to start talking at Ignite talks or something like that, make sometimes failing, or wait or prepare to the big bang speech on big conference and practicing in-house in front of your colleagues and just do a speech of your lifetime, or just fail and in some conference will be spotted by someone and your career will grow up?
Well, sometimes it depends more or less on your personality. I have performed some Ignite talks, and I'm even crazy enough to do one karaoke Ignite talk this afternoon. So it's going to be one Ignite talk that I don't know the slides, and I'm going to give a talk. But it's only because I want to get always out of my comfort zone. Depending on the way or what you are going to talk, it's easier to have a conference of 40 minutes or one of 10, 15 minutes. It's depending on the subject. Sometimes 15 minutes is not enough, or even half an hour is not enough. For some subjects, maybe there are some conferences with slots of 20 minutes. I would say try to always try with your colleagues and to do a lot. And you can get even more ideas from them to change completely the talk.
Okay, thank you. That'll be all the questions.